another to Iman, and another, which is the middle of these, and is of 1,000 stadia, to Neptune. Crantor, commenting upon Plato, asserted that the Egyptian priests declared the story of Atlantis to be written upon pillars which were still preserved circa 300 BC. See Beginnings or Glimpses of Vanished Civilizations. Ignatius Donnelly, who gave the subject of Atlantis profound study, believed that horses were first domesticated by the Atlanteans, for which reason they have always been considered peculiarly sacred to Poseidon. See Atlantis. From a careful consideration of Plato's description of Atlantis, it is evident that the story should not be regarded as wholly historical but rather as both allegorical and historical. Origen, Porphyry, Proclus, Iamblichus, and Syrianus realized that the story concealed a profound philosophical mystery, but they disagreed as to the actual interpretation. Plato's Atlantis symbolizes the threefold nature of both the universe and the human body. The 10 kings of Atlantis are the tetracties, or numbers, which are born as 5 pairs of opposites. Consult the Inn of Smyrna for the Pythagorean doctrine of opposites. The numbers 1 to 10 rule every creature, and the numbers, in turn, are under the control of the monad, or one, the eldest among them. With the trident scepter of Poseidon, these kings held sway over the inhabitants of the 7 small and 3 great islands comprising Atlantis. Philosophically, the 10 islands symbolize the triune powers of the superior deity and the 7 regions who bow before his eternal throne. If Atlantis be considered as the archetypal sphere, then its immersion signifies the descent of rational, organized consciousness into the illusionary, impermanent realm of irrational, mortal ignorance. Both the sinking of Atlantis and the biblical story of the fall of man signify spiritual involution, a prerequisite to conscious evolution. Either the initiated Plato used the Atlantis allegory to achieve 2 widely different ends, or else the accounts preserved by the Egyptian priests were tampered with to perpetuate the secret doctrine. This does not mean to imply that Atlantis is purely mythological, but it overcomes the most serious obstacle to acceptance of the Atlantis theory, namely, the fantastic accounts of its origin, size, appearance, and date of destruction, 9600 BC. In the midst of the central island of Atlantis was a lofty mountain which cast a shadow 5,000 stadia in extent and whose summit touched the sphere of her. This is the axle mountain of the world, sacred among many races and symbolic of the human head, which rises out of the 4 elements of the body. This sacred mountain, upon whose summit stood the temple of the gods, gave rise to the stories of Olympus, Meru, and Asgard. The city of the Golden Gates, the capital of Atlantis, is the one now preserved among numerous religions as the City of the Gods or the Holy City. Here is the archetype of the New Jerusalem, with its streets paved with gold and its 12 gates shining with precious stones. The history of Atlantis, writes Ignatius Donnelly, is the key of the Greek mythology. There can be no question that these gods of Greece were human beings. The tendency to attach divine attributes to great earthly rulers is one deeply implanted in human nature. See Atlantis. The same author sustains his views by noting that the deities of the Greek pantheon were nor looked upon as creators of the universe but rather as regents set over it by its more ancient original fabricators. The Garden of Eden, from which humanity was driven by a flaming sword, is perhaps an allusion to the earthly paradise supposedly located west of the Pillars of Hercules and destroyed by volcanic cataclysms. The deluge legend may be traced also to the Atlantean inundation, during which a world was destroyed by water. Was the religious, philosophic, and scientific knowledge possessed by the priestcrafts of antiquity secured from Atlantis, whose submergence obliterated every vestige of its part in the drama of world progress? Atlantean sun worship has been perpetuated in the ritualism and ceremonialism of both Christianity and pagandom. Both the cross and the serpent were Atlantean emblems of divine wisdom. The divine Atlantean progenitors of the Mayas and Quiches of Central America coexisted within the green and azure radiance of Gucumatz, the plumed serpent. The 6 skyborn sages came into manifestation as centers of light bound together or synthesized by the 7th, and chief, of their order, the feathered snake. See the Popalva. The title of winged or plumed snake was applied to Quetzalcoatl, or Kukulkan, the Central American initiate. the center of the Atlantean wisdom religion was presumably a great pyramidal temple standing on the brow of a plateau rising in the midst of the city of the Golden Gates. From here the initiate priests of the sacred feather went forth, carrying the keys of universal wisdom to the uttermost parts of the earth. The mythologies of many nations contain accounts of gods who came out of the sea. Certain shamans among the American Indians tell of holy men dressed in birds' feathers and wampum who rose out of the blue waters and instructed them in the arts and crafts. Among the legends of the Chaldeans is that of awsome, a partly amphibious creature who came out of the sea and taught the savage peoples along the shore to read and write, till the soil, cultivate herbs for healing, study the stars, establish rational forms of government, and become conversant with the sacred mysteries. Among the Mayas, Quetzalcoatl, the savior god whom some Christian scholars believe to have been St. Thomas, issued from the waters and, after instructing the people in the essentials of civilization, rode out to sea on a magic raft of serpents to escape the wrath of the fierce god of the fiery mirror, Tezcatlipoca. May it not have been that these demigods of a fabulous age who, Esdras-like, came out of the sea were Atlantean priests? All that primitive man remembered of the Atlanteans was the glory of their golden ornaments, the transcendency of their wisdom, and the sanctity of their symbols, the cross and the serpent. That they came in ships was soon forgotten, for untutored minds considered even boats as supernatural. Wherever the Atlanteans proceeded they erected pyramids and temples patterned after the great sanctuary in the city of the Golden Gates. Such is the origin of the pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, and Central America. The mounds in Normandy and Britain, as well as those of the American Indians, are remnants of a similar culture. In the midst of the Atlantean program of world colonization and conversion, the cataclysms which sank Atlantis began. The initiate priests of the sacred feather who promised to come back to their missionary settlements never returned. And after the lapse of centuries tradition preserved only a fantastic account of gods who came from a place where the sea now is. H.P. Blavatsky thus sums up the causes which precipitated the Atlantean disaster under the evil insinuations of their demon, Thevedet. The Atlantis race became a nation of wicked magicians. In consequence of this, war was declared, the story of which would be too long to narrate. Its substance may be found in the disfigured allegories of the race of Cain, the giants, and that of Noah and his righteous family. The conflict came to an end by the submersion of the Atlantis, which finds its imitation in the stories of the Babylonian and Mosaic flood. The giants and magicians and all flesh died, and every man, all except Jesethris and Noah, who are substantially identical with the great father of the Thlakithians in the Populva, or the sacred book of the Guatemalans, which also tells of his escaping in a large boat, like the Hindu Noah, Vaiswasvata. See Isis Unveiled. From the Atlanteans the world has received not only the heritage of arts and crafts, philosophies and sciences, ethics and religions, but also the heritage of hate, strife, and perversion. The Atlanteans instigated the first war, and it has been said that all subsequent wars were fought in a fruitless effort to justify the first one and right the wrong which it caused. Before Atlantis sank, its spiritually illumined initiates, who realized that their land was doomed because it had departed from the path of light, withdrew from the ill-fated continent. Carrying with them the sacred and secret doctrine, these Atlanteans established themselves in Egypt, where they became its first divine rulers. Nearly all the great cosmologic myths forming the foundation of the various sacred books of the world are based upon the Atlantean mystery rituals. The myth of the dying god. The myth of Tammuz and Ishtar is one of the earliest examples of the dying god allegory, probably antedating 4000 BC. See Babylonia and Assyria by Lewis Spence. The imperfect condition of the tablets upon which the legends are inscribed makes it impossible to secure more than a fragmentary account of the Tammuz rites. Being the esoteric god of the sun, Tammuz did not occupy a position among the first deities venerated by the Babylonians, who for lack of deeper knowledge looked upon him as a god of agriculture or a vegetation spirit. Originally he was described as being one of the guardians of the gates of the underworld. Like many other savior gods, he is referred to as a shepherd or the lord of the shepherd's seat. Tammuz occupies the remarkable position of son and husband of Ishtar, the Babylonian and Assyrian mother goddess. Ishtar, to whom the planar Venus was sacred, was the most widely venerated deity of the Babylonian and Assyrian pantheon. She was probably identical